Welcome back to our live training session. We're going to be taking a look in this tutorial at setting up and completing our base map creation process. In our last tutorial, we went through setting up inputs and outputs and some of the background programming details. Now we're going to move into setting up our two-dimensional and three-dimensional table programming, such as our volumetric efficiency table, spark timing table, variable cam control tables. We have a lot to discuss and unpack here in this tutorial. So let's jump in here and take a look at where we're at on my laptop screen. I have the EMU Black software open on my laptop screen, and we're going to find down here at the bottom, I'm in connected state, so I'm going to be plugged into the EMU Black. I have my vehicle powered on, but I don't have the engine running. So we're key on, engine off, and we're connected live with our EMU Black. Now, what we can do from here is go into our layout that I've supplied in the training course folder and start to go through all of the different various windows that we have here. So in this particular layout that we're working with is going to be found here under desktops. Let's go here to open desktop template, and I'm going to go and find my main tuning option here. So we see here, main tuning, and we're going to go ahead and select this option here. And this is what I'm using in this tutorial. Let's just give it a second to load. And this is exactly what we're going to be going through and modifying so you can follow along with what I have on my laptop screen. So in my setup window here, taking a look, going through all of your configuration here, we've went through and we've dealt with everything in this screen, and that's from the last tutorial. Let's go into our cranking fuel and talk about some things. Now here in our cranking fuel, this is going to be associated to the prime pulse and cranking and after start fueling to our engine. And I don't believe in here that we have our warm-up enrichment. So everything is lumped into this one window. This is going to be associated for the prime pulse, which is going to be found here, and then the cranking fuel found up here. These are going to be what allows the engine to crank, fire, and run. And once the engine's actually fired up and starting to run, we're going to find that we apply an after start enrichment and also a warm-up enrichment. The after start enrichment's applied for the first 10-20 seconds of the engine runtime, and then it tapers and decays away, and then we go off of the warm-up table, assuming the engine's cold, and this provides additional fueling for allowing the engine to operate and run so it doesn't run lean when it's in the warm-up state. So what we need to do here is take a look at some of our basic details with our cranking fuel, making sure that our parameters here have been set up and configured correctly so that it's utilizing at least the cranking table properly. So again, we can get the engine to crank, fire, and run. Now the after start enrichment and the warm-up enrichment, we're going to leave these values and the default table values from EMU in the base map that they've supplied for a K-Series engine, and we'll tweak and adjust as we need. We're going to go through specific tutorial looking at our cold start and warm-up enrichment. We'll also take a look at our after start enrichment when we're firing off an engine warm. So we're going to be looking in two different conditions in order to calibrate our tables. That's going to be in future tutorials coming up here in this live training series that we're working with here with our EMU Black. So first things first, let's just jump in here to our engine start parameters. This is going to be associated to how we command and work with the cranking and the prime pulse. So first things first, we see enable prime pulse. That's toggled on, that utilizes the prime pulse table down here. Now this table is based on coolant temperature. We can see it in Celsius here at the bottom, and then it's based on an actual millisecond pulse time. Now what's to note about this is we tell the EMU Black what size injectors we have, that converts that injector flow size into a pulse width by going through the fuel and airflow modeling. We'll get into that once we get the engine to fire up and run. But the prime pulse table here is acting essentially outside of looking at the injector flow. So if you have really big injectors installed, you may need to drop down your prime pulse table. These values will work fairly well for a smaller size injector. Stock size was 310. We went to an RDX 410cc injector on this engine. So what we have in here should work, but we might need to modify it. Now the prime pulse is only used to squirt fuel into the engine for the first 1 or 2 cranking revolutions. Then it goes and it stops using the prime pulse, and then it transitions here into our cranking fuel table. So the cranking fuel is more of the long-term steady state cranking as we're cranking over the engine. Now hopefully we don't crank more than a few times before it fires off and it starts to run, but we'll find that prime pulse is what it uses first. So we want to have prime pulse toggled on. Now the next option here, batch all injectors. When we toggle this on, it's going to go ahead under cranking conditions and spray the fuel out of all of the injectors at the same time. So we're not staging the injectors in a sequential orientation as we're cranking over the engine. This gets the fuel into the engine, and even in cylinders that if we're batching them and firing them all at the same time, it's going to get fuel into certain cylinders that may not be positioned correctly in terms of the intake valve opening It doesn't really matter. We need to get the fuel into the engine, so this just puts fuel into the engine based on our cranking conditions. You can leave on or off batch all injectors. This can help aid firing and getting the engine to crank and fire run on some engines. I'll go ahead and just keep that on. Essentially what this is doing is ignoring the cam sync and just firing the injectors all at the same time. So the cranking threshold, now this is important. The cranking threshold, in this case, we're saying anything below 300 RPM, it's going to use initially the prime pulse and then the cranking fuel table. Anything over 300 RPM, it's going to consider the engine to be up and running and actually starting to fire off. And it transitions its way out of using any of the cranking or prime pulse tables. It then moves into looking at the normal air and fuel model, and then it applies the after start enrichment and the warm-up enrichment on top of our normal airflow and fuel model. So 350 is probably a good cranking. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.